Okay, Colonization Flip Classroom Part 3. The Dominion of New England. I've mentioned the Stuart Kings several times now, and here we see one of the finest examples of them exercising absolute power and extreme control over the entire kingdom. Throughout time, the colonies had grown more and more independent. Not that they didn't honor the king or were even thinking of becoming an independent nation, but they didn't necessarily always follow the laws. For example, some of the trade laws were quite strict, forcing the colonists to only trade with England. Colonists had worked around this by trading with other countries, and with the king so far away, it was hard to enforce the trade laws. That is, until James II. He decided that it was high time to get those colonists under control. He revoked the original colonial charter, which means contract, and united all the New England colonies together under a royal governor named Andros. All self-government was forbidden. The freedoms colonists had become so accustomed to were now gone. Fortunately, this abuse of power was also taking place in Britain, and the British were not going to stand for it. So things were very horrible between the colonists and England. And here you should have ignored English trade laws. And then down here you should have self-government.
The Glorious Revolution. The Parliament disbanded by the king decided enough was enough. They asked James II's daughter Mary and her husband William to take over the throne. They were currently residing in the Netherlands. And since Britain was so much larger than the Netherlands, it was an offer they couldn't refuse.
Of course, Parliament wanted to make sure this sort of thing didn't happen again. So they had William and Mary sign the English Bill of Rights, granting even more power to Parliament and therefore to the people, since the power of the Parliament comes from the people. This document also expanded individual rights, directly empowering the public. This document very much influenced our Constitution and Bill of Rights.
I love this picture of William and Mary as children. Believe it or not, they may have been married at this time. It was common for royalty to arrange marriages from birth, and sometimes marriages were carried out at young ages to seal the deal, so to speak. Often these marriages were more of a business arrangement among countries than anything else. Can you imagine?
Now this revolution didn't really involve fighting. A revolution just means a major change. In this particular case, when William and Mary showed up to take the throne, James II ran away. To review your blanks, expanded individual rights, and down here, the U.S. Constitution. The Great Awakening. As the colonies took hold and people began to live their lives, church became second to work. A new movement began to get these colonists back to church. There were two of these movements, the First and Second Great Awakenings. During these events, preachers traveled through the colonies holding great revivals. These usually took place in the town square and drew huge crowds. Remember, there were no movies, TV, radio, etc. So when an event like this took place, everyone came out to see and hear the preachers. These preachers gave emotional speeches that were really powerful. This really started even more Protestant churches in the colonies. Churches like the Methodists, Baptists, Presbyterians, etc. were some that started during this time. This religious movement actually helped spread democratic ideas. Not only were more people participating in making church decisions and becoming more accustomed to having a say, but through church ideals, people were taught to treat people equally. This led to less class division and better treatment of all white people. Slaves at this time were not considered equals to the white colonists. Here you should have Protestant, and then down here, equal and participation.
Navigation Acts. As we have mentioned, many colonies were founded for economic reasons. England owned all the colonies, and the number one goal of the kings and queens was to make money. So they used the colonies to do just that. One way they accomplished this goal was through the Navigation Acts. These acts controlled all the trade of the colonies. You see, the colonies were filled with all kinds of natural resources: lumber, iron, fur. The colonies were then forced to ship all of these natural resources as raw materials. Britain would then turn these raw materials into finished products and sell them back to the colonies. Sounds like a good deal, but here's the catch. The colonists were forced to sell their raw materials for cheap and buy the finished products for any price that Britain set. Since they were not allowed to trade with other countries, Britain controlled the entire pricing market.
Boo!
That's right. To add salt to the wound, colonists also had to pay taxes on these goods. As you can imagine, the colonists took every advantage of being so far away from England to circumvent these laws. As the colonists were periodically ignored by the British, they developed their own trading agreements with other countries. This is where smuggling comes in. Smuggling was a huge business on the coast of the colonies. In fact, you can still find hidden passages and rooms in many old houses on the coast that served as places to hide smuggled goods from British officials. Colonists became accustomed to the idea of free enterprise, meaning they could trade with whomever they wanted and conduct their business with little government interference. This is an important idea in our country, and our founding fathers made sure to protect it.
Okay, here, this doesn't match that, does it? Okay, a country becomes richer by exporting more than it imports. And down here, paid taxes. And here, they smuggled goods. Okay, I love this. You need to check out this cartoon. The triangular trade route. As we mentioned with the Navigation Acts, colonists were forced to send raw materials to only England and in turn bought finished products from England. This trade route became known as the triangular trade route. Look closely at the arrows to see exactly how this trade worked. Okay, so you can see the raw materials going here and then the manufactured goods coming back to England.
One leg of the triangular trade route involved the taking of Africans from Africa and bringing them to the West Indies and onto the colonies as slaves. This passage was known as the Middle Passage. Conditions on these boats were horrendous. The image on this slide gives you only a small idea of how packed in Africans were on these ships. They were chained to each other as well as the boat itself. They were kept under deck with few, if any, chances of fresh air. Conditions were less than humane, and many Africans died on this journey. Slavery is a definite black mark on our history. It is one we must study as to never let it happen again.
So if you look at this picture here, these are all people, okay, that are that close together. Okay, up here, this should be rum making. They use sugar and molasses to make rum. And then down here, Africans, and often chained below deck here. Scientific revolution. Even after the period of the Renaissance, Europeans continued to expand their knowledge of the world. This led to the scientific revolution. This is where we see Galileo discover that the Earth is not the center of the universe, but instead the sun is, and all the planets revolve around the sun. Isaac Newton discovers gravity, the force that keeps us on Earth. Even in the colonies, we see some scientists and discoveries being made. Benjamin Banneker made the first American-made clock, which, think about that for just a second. All those tiny inner workings of a clock are quite intricate. This is quite a feat to accomplish, and that wasn't his only accomplishment. Benjamin Banneker helped to lay out Washington, D.C., which was really one of the first master plan cities. And of course, we all recognize Benjamin Franklin's name. I do believe we could spend an entire year just studying Benjamin Franklin and all of his accomplishments. He invented bifocal glasses, wood-burning stove, improved printing press, dabbled with electricity, and so much more. Okay, here, this should be Benjamin Banneker, and then this is Benjamin Franklin.
The Enlightenment. Again, as a lingering idea from the Renaissance, the Enlightenment was a period in which we see lots of philosophical thinking. Men began studying human nature and cultures and the interaction of people in their government. These thinkers right here were so important in forming our country. This is who our founding fathers looked at when writing our Constitution and designing our government. So in case you missed this, the Enlightenment thinkers are huge, so important. John Locke really formed the idea that all people are born with certain rights and that it's the government's job to protect these rights. Montesquieu came up with the ideas about how government power should be shared among different entities, like the king and parliament, or like our 3 branches of government. William Blackstone helped define the legal system in England, which in turn defined the legal system in America.
Okay, here, government should protect these rights. Separation of powers. And then for the American legal system here. All right, that's it.